Morning, it's Bob Mason from FX Empire and welcome to the daily crypto tech review of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin and Ripple's XRP, looking at the MACDs, the moving averages and the day's support, resistance and pivot levels. It is Wednesday, the 13th of January. Jumping straight into Bitcoin against the US dollar, it's a bearish start to the morning here. Going to need to see Bitcoin move through the pivot at 34,402 to take a run at the first major resistance level, sitting at 36,377. Going to see support from the broader market for Bitcoin to break out from Tuesday's high that was at 36,356. So barring an extended crypto rally on the day, expect the first major resistance level and Tuesday's high to cap any upside on the day. In the event of an extended rally, second major resistance level at 38,631 and resistance at 40,000 would likely come into play. Failure to move back through the pivot would bring the 23.6% fib at 33,000 back into play and the first major support level sitting at 32,148. Barring an extended sell-off on the day, Bitcoin should avoid sub 30,000 levels, however. Second major support level at 3173 should limit the downside. On the MACD, we got a widening of the bearish histograms supporting the early morning pullback. On the EMA, we're also seeing the 50 pullback from the 100 and the 200, and the 100 narrow in on the 200 suggests a further downside ahead. So failure to move through the pivot at 34,402 would bring the first major support level at 32,148 and sub 32,000 levels into play. Moving across Ethereum against the US dollar, particularly bearish start to the day. Going to need to see Ethereum move back through the 23.6% fib at 1051 and move through the pivot level at 1069 to bring the first major resistance level at 1131 into play. Going to need to see support from the broader market for Ethereum to break back through to 1100 levels, however. So barring an extended rally on the day, expect that first major resistance level and Tuesday's high at 1150 to cap any upside. In the event of an extended rally on the day, expect Ethereum to test resistance at 1250 before any pullback. Second major resistance level sits at 1212. Failure to move back through the 23.6% fib and through the pivot level at 1069 would bring the first major support level sitting at 988 into play. Barring an extended sell-off on the day, Ethereum should avoid sub 900 levels. The second major support level at 926 should limit the downside. Looking at the MACD, we got a widening of the bearish histograms after yesterday's late bearish cross, supporting this early pullback. On the EMAs, we got a bearish cross there, the 50 through the 200, suggestive and supporting this early downside and further downside ahead. So failure to move through the 23.6% fib and the pivot at 1069 would leave support levels in play. Moving across to Litecoin against the US dollar, also bearish this morning. Going to need to see Litecoin move through the pivot at 136 to bring the first major resistance level at 144 into play. Going to need to see support from the broader market for Litecoin to break back through to 140s. So barring an extended rally on the day, expect that first major resistance level and the 23.6% fib at 148 to cap any upside. In the event of an extended rally, second major resistance level at 155 would likely come into play. Failure to move through the pivot would bring the first major support level and the 38.2% fib at 125 into play. Barring an extended sell-off through the day, Litecoin should avoid sub 120s. Second major support level sits at 117. Looking at the MACDs, we've got a widening of the bearish histograms after yesterday's late bearish cross, supporting this early morning pullback. Also seeing the 50 EMA pullback from the 100 and the 200, supportive of further downside through the morning. So failure to move through the pivot at 136 would bring the 38.2% fib and the first major support level into play. Finally, looking at Ripple's XRP against the US dollar, also in the red early on. Going to need to see Ripple's XRP move back through the pivot at 0.2933 to take a run at the first major resistance level, saying at 0.3092. Going to need to see support from the broader market for Ripple's XRP to break back through to 0.30 levels. So buying and extended rally on the day, expect that first major resistance level and resistance at 0.31 to cap any upside. In the event of breakout, got the 23.6% fib at 0.3172 and resistance at 0.32 to cap any upside. Second major resistance level sits at 0.3258. Failure to move back through the pivot would bring the first major support level at 0.2767 into play. Buying and extended sell-off on the day, Ripple's XRP should avoid sub 0.25 levels. Second major support level at 0.2608 should limit the downside. Looking at the MACD, there's a slight widening of the bearish histogram supporting this early pullback. On the EMAs, however, the 50 is holding its ground against the 100 and the 200, so inconclusive there. The key through the early part of the day would be for Ripple's XRP to move back through the pivot at 0.2933 and back through to 0.30 levels to bring resistance levels into play. Failure to do that and support levels are in play.